franktalks.com.
Relationships are a wonderful part of life, whether it's friendship, family, or a love interest. But relationships can also make life difficult. At what point is it important for you to stop caring about what those around you think is in your best interest? Relationship coach Frank Kermit joins us to talk about ways to make your needs the priority. Frank, welcome back to the Kelly Alexander Show.
Thank you, Kelly. Always a pleasure to be here.
Do you think it's important to not have regrets when it comes to relationships?
Well, absolutely, and most people tend to regret the things they haven't done more than the things they have done. That's not a license to go out and do everything and anything you want, because sometimes taking the wrong action has a lot of consequences too. But when it comes to people regretting all the things about their life that, could have been different, woulda, shoulda, they usually focus on the people they didn't give a chance to date, or the people they didn't take a chance on even to experiment or explore something, because they worried about what others thought at that time. Now, there are cases where, you need to worry about what other people think, and there are cases where worrying about what other people think is holding you back. So you have to be careful to balance when it is a good idea to do that and when it's not.
Can you explain the difference, Frank? Can you give an example for each?
Okay. When should you not worry about what other people think? When what they think really has no bearing or consequence on your ability to live your life. So if it's your neighbor from 3 doors down the street who gives you a dirty look, or who disapproves of your lifestyle, your relationship choices, well, then you got to go ahead and live your life anyway, because there's always going to be somebody who has a problem with what you do and who you might do. Now, if it is someone that has a direct access to your ability to live your life, sometimes it could be an employer. Sometimes it could be a member of your family who is in the process of taking care of you and supporting you. At that point, you have to make a choice. Do you go ahead and do it and try to keep it from them, or do you hold off from doing it until such a time as you can be more independent? Or do you say, the heck with it, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway and just suffer the consequences? It's very easy for everybody to say, who cares what other people think? But the fact is that depending on the context, you really do have to worry about what some other people think if they have the power to interfere with your ability to live your life.
And when is it sort of not of benefit to listen to someone else around you with regards to maybe your love interest? Because I think sometimes, like, quote unquote, when people get in your ear, it's not always the right thing, and it might really wreck something special.
Well, look, you have to distinguish people who have the best of intentions because they're looking out for your benefit. They want to keep you safe. They want to make sure that you don't end up getting hurt. So let's separate the intention of the people who are trying to interfere. There are people who interfere and they have the best of intentions, but it's really not their place. And then there are those people whose intentions are malicious, whether they're jealous, whether they give you bad advice to try and sabotage you because they don't want you to be happy. So that would be the first step. Let's identify the person's intention. Your best friend, as much as you trust that person, may not want you to get along with your new relationship partner because that best friend might feel that your friendship with him or her is threatened. Are they really the best person to advise you? Only you would know. And when is it not a benefit? Again, when they don't actually benefit from you being happy and when they don't benefit from you not being happy.
And Frank, I think it's important as well to figure out when it's best to follow your own interests, because again, I think some people don't trust themselves, especially if they've had maybe or made questionable decisions in the past. But obviously we all learn from that, hopefully. But sometimes I think it's really easy to listen to other people and not yourself.
Look, it's always easier to listen to somebody else because it relieves us of the responsibility of being accountable. And people, generally speaking, don't like to be accountable. It's one of the reasons that con artists exist. This is what they prey on. They look for people who want somebody else to say, I'll take responsibility for whatever happens. Well, the reality is you're the one who's going to suffer for other people's decisions if it involves you. And no matter how much you say, well, that person is the one who decided for me, they're not the ones who are going to have to deal with the consequences if it was a bad decision. It's really, really challenging for some people to start learning to trust in their own instincts because, again, as you said, some people have made bad choices, and hopefully they've learned their lesson. But when you're dealing with somebody who hasn't learned their lesson and they keep going back to make the same mistakes, they may go ahead and ask somebody else to step in for them. Here's the problem. If somebody else is making the decisions for you, it means you haven't really learned not to make that mistake again. So as soon as you remove that other person from the equation, you're right back to where you started. Hopefully you can learn from your past mistakes. Hopefully every time you have a bad relationship experience, you can say, okay, what did I learn from that so I don't make that same mistake again? But worrying about what other people think isn't going to solve that problem. You have to solve that problem by taking accountability for the choices you've made and realizing that your situation right now is a result of the choices you've made.
Joining us on the Kelly Alexander Show, relationship coach Frank Kermit. If you want to get into contact with Frank or learn more and get more information, go to his website, franktalks.com. Frank, you know, something that I was thinking about when you were talking is the fact that again, a lot of people like to pass the buck onto someone else because they don't want to take the responsibility. In all of your work, have you noticed with some of your clients or again, just through your own research and stuff like that, where this crops up? Like, is it from a certain family type that you would sort of pick up these maneuvers, like where maybe your parents are really controlling, so you just let them sort of run your life till you were 25 and you don't know how to handle things?
What I often find is that by the time people are ready to come into coaching, they've reached a point where they say, look, I'm not really sure how I got into this situation. All I know is that I want to get out. So they're ready at that point to at least adopt some new behaviors and experiment with some new belief systems. It's the people who come in and say, well, the rest of the world is crazy. I'm the one who's right. And when I point out to them, because as a coach, I can do something that a lot of therapists cannot do. And as a therapist, you have to help the person lead themselves to the answer. As a coach, I can give you an opinion. I can say, no, I think this is where you're going wrong. When I tell people, well, look, you're the one who's making the mistake here. This is exactly what you're doing wrong. If a person is not ready to hear that, well, they're probably not going to enjoy that session very much. And I do my best to try and, bring it up as gently as I can. But when you're presenting somebody and saying, look, you've made this choice, and this was the wrong choice to have made. That's why you're in this situation now. There are people who simply say, no, this is wrong. I won't accept this. Because once a person realizes that they are at the root of every single issue they have, it forces them to face a reality that they may not be comfortable facing. And I can tell you, it has nothing to do with any particular family type, any particular denomination. It runs across the board. When you're dealing with people who are unwilling to accept their responsibility in the relationship choices they make, it happens at all ages, all genders, all relationship structures. And the fact is that it's a survival mechanism. If you wanted to pinpoint something that you can identify and say, okay, this is where the root is, it's a survival mechanism. Whatever it is that people have that probably works against them now, that habit has formed because at one time it was probably what they needed in order to survive a past situation. And this is where we go into some work, whether it be therapy or coaching, and say, okay, let's look at how this particular quality that's getting in your way now may have been exactly what you needed to survive a past situation, but that past situation is done. Now we're ready to move on so that you can have an emotionally healthy relationship, and that means you may have to adopt a new set of principles and a new set of beliefs to make that happen.
Frank, what do you tell someone who maybe wants to date someone that they know their family will not approve of and it's going to be a bit of a battle? What do you suggest in that situation?
Okay, well, let's first look at that situation. The question I would have is, what are you dependent on for your family? When it comes to your family, what do you rely on them for that you cannot get elsewhere and that you cannot get independently? Let's use the example of a teenager who has decided they want to come out of the closet and admit to their family and share with their family that they have, they've come to know themselves and they're now gay. All right? At that point, my question is, are you dependent on your family to survive? Is your family putting you through school? Are you old enough or skilled enough to be an independent, can you support yourself independently? Do you have a career going? Now, if the answer is, well, no, my parents are my only support system here, I have nobody else to go to, the next question, when you say that they would disapprove of who you may want to date, in this case, someone of the same gender, how do you think your parents are going to react based on what they may have said in the past, the way they've supported people around them in a similar situation? Now, if I'm told, look, my parents have never, they've been supportive, they probably wouldn't be too thrilled, maybe they have an inkling, maybe they already know, well, at that point, sharing that with your family, as hard as it may be, may not be detrimental. They'll still be there to support you, they're still going to put you through school, they're still going to help you get your career off the ground, and they're going to help you get a good start in life. If, however, telling your parents might mean you could end up being on the street and you're not old enough to be able to support yourself, or you don't have the skills to land a good paying job, well, at that point, no, it's not a time to share it. Wait till you're in a position to be self-sufficient and independent, so that way, when you tell them, if they go ahead and abandon you for it, you at least can continue living your life, and you're not going to end up in a situation that's, it could end up becoming incredibly dangerous for you. So that's how you have to think about it. It's not so much whether somebody's going to like it or not like it, or like you or not like you. Over the course of your life, there's always going to be people who one day love you and the next day don't want to hang out with you because you've made certain choices, or you've decided to embrace something that you've always been passionate about, or you finally learned to accept yourself. The issue is, when it comes to those people whose approval that you do need, where you do need to worry about what they think, do those people place any sort of block in your ability to survive? And if they do in any way, that's when you need to hold off. If you want to date somebody and your family won't approve, you either try to date in secret with the understanding that you may get found out, and are you prepared for the consequences? If you're not prepared for the consequences, don't date that person yet, or don't date that type of person yet. Wait until you are in a position to be more independent and use this. Let it motivate you. Let it fuel you to get to that level of independence.
How can you balance when your needs take priority versus when you should be taking into account what others around you are saying?
Now, this is actually a very easy question to ask, although it doesn't seem like that. You have to take an account of what your needs are. And if we're talking about losing your ability to get an education, to be supported, those are needs that a lot of people take for granted. Sometimes I'm working with a client, and the client says, oh, my parents will definitely be there for me, or my family will be there for me no matter what. And I try to explain to them, well, based on what you've told me, your family is a very controlling and domineering, this is a bad environment for you. This is why you're struggling. Had it ever occurred to you that your family may not be supportive and may very well abandon you for making these choices? And if they do, are you in a position to be independent? And that's when the eyes go wide and they have to start thinking, wait a minute, and the cause for pause is there. So when do you put your needs ahead of, the needs of other people in terms of what they think? Once again, are you in a position to be independent? Once you're in a position to be independent, once you're willing to deal with the consequences, whatever those consequences may be, that's when you can always put your needs at the forefront. But until your basic needs are met, survival, that's when those other needs, such as getting involved with somebody and experimenting with a relationship, that's when those needs can take a back seat, because if you aren't able to, at the very least, survive, then having the freedom to date whoever you want becomes kind of meaningless when you're struggling to get a minimum wage job just to pay the basic bills so you don't end up on the street.
Are these a good time, or is this a good time, Frank, when situations like this is going on, for you to learn to trust your gut or your inner knowing or whatever you want to call it? Because it seems like this could be a really good learning experience to get to know you.
Anytime you want to get involved with someone, it's a good learning experience. And when you deal with people who may or may not like what it is you're doing, you're going to learn one way or another how important it is. The story that I can relate to is this. When I was first learning about different relationship structures, I was going out there, I was meeting people in all kinds of relationships, whether they be the very conservative and traditional to the fetish lifestyle, BDSM, and I made an error in a judgment call when I happened to share that with somebody that at that point I thought would be open-minded about it. And it turns out that person was not open-minded about it. In fact, that person came to me later on saying, you know, those people that you're getting to know, they're all weird, they're all sick. And she started going on and on about this. Now, here's why it was such a bad mistake on my part. This person that I shared this with was a coworker. And initially, the coworker had presented herself as somebody very open-minded, someone who, oh, you know, I know all about this stuff. This is fine. And when I said, well, you know, I went out to this event and I met these people who do this sort of thing, and it was fantastic. We got into a wonderful conversation. I hadn't even talked about participating in anything. I'm just talking about hanging out with these people and getting to know them, even interviewing them for a podcast or something. Well, one day she came in and she was furious in a bad mood, and I was on the receiving end of, and you better be careful because these people are evil and they're sick and they're going to twist you, and I didn't even see this coming. Now that, of course, put a bit of a taint every time I had to work with this person again in the future, knowing that, okay, regardless of how that person presented herself initially, she isn't as open-minded as she pretends to be. And when the dust settles, she's not somebody who I can feel open with and can share with. This is the type of thing you got to understand. Yes, you're going to learn something. Yes, you're going to go out there and explore. And if you are willing to accept the consequences, that's the thing. We can choose our actions, but we don't choose our consequences to those actions. There's no way you can predict how people are actually and realistically going to react to your choices. That's why when you make the decision, I am going to do this, and I don't care what other people think, well, that means that when you're faced with that type of negativity, when you're faced with that type of aggression, you need to be strong enough to say, I know you don't like it, but that's okay. It doesn't affect me. I'm sorry you can't handle it. I will modify my behavior around you, that I won't share these things with you in the future. I won't share anything with you in the future. But I would rather deal with this consequence and have experienced what I've experienced than to just continue worrying about someone who, quite frankly now, years later in my life, isn't even a factor.
Frank, what final thoughts do you want to leave us with on this topic?
The final thought is that it's wonderful and grandiose to say, who cares what anybody else thinks? It's a wonderful, grandiose statement, and you can feel really powerful in the moment. The reality is, you do have to think about what some other people think if those people are really important to you. And the fact is that as much as you want to be happy, and it's important that you find a sense of balance in your life, you have to know that your choices, whatever they may be, will affect those people around you and those people closest to you. So you do need to factor in what they think to a certain point. And when you make a decision and say, well, my need for my people around me to be happy and loving is more important than me exploring this one aspect, you may adhere to that temporarily or fully. It's up to you. Or you may decide, no, my need to live my life and not regret anything and making sure that I explore everything I need to explore, that's more important to me. And if the people around me and closest to me are disappointed in that, they're probably people that I shouldn't have in my life, and I'm willing to lose them. Once again, if that's a choice you want to make, you have to own it. It's not an easy decision. It's not. We can always say, who cares what everybody else thinks? You know what? We all care about what some people think, especially if we care about the people around us. It's making that call. At what point do we draw the line? Everybody draws the line in a different place. You have to know where you're drawing the line and be comfortable with everything that you might lose for drawing the line where you do. And if you can live with that, if you can wake up in the morning and know, this is where I've drawn the line, and I'm okay with everything that I'm going to lose because I look at everything I'm gaining from that, then you're okay.
Frank, thank you so much for your time today. As always, we really appreciate it.
Anytime, Kelly. Looking forward to many more appearances.
That's relationship coach Frank Kermit. Don't forget to check him out on our website, kellyalexandershow.com, and you can also get more tips and contact information for Frank himself on his website, franktalks.com.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com. franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. What do you do when your love goes away? Try coaching one-on-one. How do I sign up to turn things around? Just sign up at franktalks.com. Yeah, get by with help from Frank Talks. I get by with little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks. Does it cost a lot of money? It's the best rate going around. Could it cost a lot of money? Oh, it's worth every cent that you will put down. Yeah. franktalks.com. Oh, you got to go to get your help from franktalks.com. Yeah, yeah. franktalks.com. Would you believe that Frank gets results? Yes, we're certain. Just read the reviews. Frank knows his stuff, and Frank's got the goods. Good love can soon come to you.